Welcome back, everyone. I am super excited to share with you some big Adobe updates that are available today. This is a massive photography update across all photography applications, including Adobe Lightroom Classic, Adobe Lightroom CC, Adobe Lightroom Mobile, Camera Raw, adobe.lightroom.com, as well as Photoshop Mobile. And so, first of all, there is the ongoing performance upgrades that Adobe are constantly doing. This is not really super sexy to show, but under the hood, you're going to see much better performance in terms of the UI when you're scrolling through grids, so on and so forth. But there are some brand new features that I'm super excited about, so I want to dive right in. The first one we're going to talk about is localized hue adjustments. So come on over. I've got this image of some flowers here. Now, there's a lot of oranges and yellows going on in here. What if I want to change the hue or put some more color variation of just maybe one of these flowers? Well, you know, previously you could go down here and you could mess with your HSL sliders for the hue, saturation, and luminance. That is one way of doing it, but the problem with this is it affects the entire image. And so what if I just want to affect one flower in this case? Well, now we have a way of doing that. So what we're going to do is go into the masking tool here, and I've got a couple masks set up. I did this previously because, well, I wanted to save a little bit of time here, but I'm going to go ahead and select this first one. And if you want to toggle the mask on and off, right now it is off. You hit the letter O on the keyboard. You can now see the orange mask. I'll turn it back off. Now what we have over here under the mask tool, in addition to all of the other tools that we've had previously, is we have this new hue adjustment. And so basically, if I start moving this slider, it's just going to affect the mask. So I could turn this flower an ugly green if I wanted to, or I could turn it this way and go to a lavender or a pink or something like that. It's pretty extreme, but you could go in here and mix with the saturation and other things, and you can get some pretty cool creative effects going on. That's an extreme example, but let me give you another one that is very useful. So I have edited this image previously, and one thing that I did on here is I used some masking to, I'll go ahead and hit the letter O so you can see it, to basically do some burning and dodging. This isn't a super clean mask, but it's just some subtle updates. So if I turn this on and off, so let's toggle before and after. Here's before, here's after. So basically I've just adjusted some localized contrast in this image to give it a little bit of lift, a little bit of character. Well, now I can actually go in here with the hue slider, and I can just affect those areas of the image that I've done previously just by masking that out and burning and dodging. I'm going to grab another one here, and let's change the hue on that too. So there's some really cool creative effects that you can get that are kind of subtle, and there's a lot of possibilities. So anyway, this is a quick before and after here. This is a very handy tool. That's a big difference and a very welcome upgrade. So I've used a combination of the hue slider and then as well as some exposure and probably a little bit of dehaze and contrast just to give it a little burning and dodging in that image. So that is localized hue adjustments. Another big use case for this is when you're dealing with portraits and you are dealing with skin retouching, and sometimes you have an instance like this where the image looks pretty good, but the model, her skin's just a little on the red pink side. So one thing I can do, again, I previously made the mask in the interest of time, but I covered her entire skin area, and I can go in here. Now what you don't want to do is make her look like Frankenstein here and just turn her into a green alien, but let's reset that. You can also tick this little box here that says use fine adjustment, and this is going to keep it from going just completely out of control. And I can pull that a little outside the red zone and make her just a little less pink without going out of control, and you can make super fine adjustments on here. So very cool and very useful. Another new feature that I think you're going to be excited about if you shoot in low light a lot is the ability to create what we call ISO adaptive presets. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So I've got 3 images here that were all taken with the same camera. This is with a little 1-inch sensor, so it's going to be prone to noise. This was the Sony RX106. This first image was shot at an ISO of 125. The second example was one that was shot at, let's see, 800, and this third example was shot at 6400. Now, if you zoom in on the one that was shot at 125, you're going to see that it's a really clean image. That's the base ISO of the camera. So in the digital world, essentially, ISO is a way of adding gain to the image, so you're amplifying the signal coming in. So what happens is at higher ISO settings, so for instance 6400, especially on a small sensor, you're going to start seeing all kinds of noise and artifacting, and it looks a little grainy and a little weird in here. And that's just what happens when you crank the ISO up. So we can clean this up a little bit if we go into the develop panel here and you scroll down here to the noise reduction setting. And I'm going to bring my luminance up, and let's say maybe about 38 or so, and let's bring the color up just a little bit too. And I've kind of cleaned that up. You can get more specific than this, but for our example here is before, where we have a lot of noise, a lot of grain. You can see a lot of coloration going on in there. And then let's clean it up with our noise reduction settings. Okay, everything looks really good. If I compare that to the first image now, you're going to see that this is obviously still the cleanest, and maybe I want to go work on this some more and clean it up just a little more, but you get the idea. But the idea here is that if you're shooting on the same camera often, and most of you are, we can now create a preset that will auto-apply the correct amount of noise reduction depending on what your ISO setting is. So what this actually requires is you need to select at least 2 images. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to select this first one, and I'm going to select the one that the lower ISO also. And what we're going to do is we are going to go under our presets tab here, and I'm going to click the little add here. We're going to say create preset, and I'm just going to call this Sony RX106 cleanup, or whatever you want to call it. And what we're going to do here is I don't want everything in here. Let's say check none, but I do want my noise reduction in here. So we're going to go ahead and select that. And then under ISO settings here, there's a little tick box. This is brand new that says create ISO adaptive presets. So we're going to go ahead and tick that. We're going to say create, and it's going to create in my user presets, you're going to find it in there, a brand new preset for our Sony RX106 cleanup. Now, what's cool about this is it will not apply the same noise reduction settings to every image. It will only apply them based on what the ISO is. So let me give you an example. I'm going to go ahead in here and let's pick the first one. Actually, let's pick all 3 of these, and I'm going to go ahead and apply this preset. Let's apply it to the middle one here and apply it to the high noise one here. Now, if we go down to the noise reduction settings, remember I just changed this one to 38 and this one to 36. Let's go to that middle image that was shot at 800 ISO, and you're going to see that it auto bumped those. It figured out what the difference was, 18 and 30, and then if I go back down here, it leaves it at the default because there was no noise reduction applied to this base ISO image. So this is really cool because you can go in and set these up for each camera that you've got, and it's going to apply an adaptive ISO. And so I only did this with 2 images, but you could go ahead and shoot at every ISO setting, select them all, I suppose, and do it that way. But you really just need the highest and the lowest, and then what it'll do is mathematically figure out what those differences are between them. This is a really useful addition, and I think this is something that a lot of people are really going to like. Another new feature that's very useful is we have new crop guides. So if you're going to crop an image, you can hit the letter R on the keyboard, or you can hit the crop icon here on the develop panel, and it's going to activate this. And this is what we're used to seeing, is this kind of generic rule of thirds guides that we have here. So when I'm cropping, I can take that into consideration for my composition. Or you could press the letter O on the keyboard to scroll between these, and look, we have all kinds of new stuff now. We've got just one if you want to center something in the image. This is going to really be useful for a lot of people. We've got all kinds of configurations, variations on rules of thirds. We have dynamic symmetry, for instance, on this one. We have a condensed rule of thirds here. We have the golden mean, the golden ratio, if you want to work with that. Anyway, this is very useful, and this is something that has been kind of needed, I think, for a long time. It's very useful if you're doing any cropping. And for those of you who use cloud syncing and the sync feature in Lightroom Classic, this is really nice too. You probably know, if you've done this for a while, that it didn't used to be as good as it is now. It's gotten a lot better. In fact, I think the last couple of years it's been really good, and I use it all the time, particularly when I'm doing mobile phone demos, and I can sync images from the phone through Lightroom. It comes down onto my desktop, and everything's great. It also syncs edits between the two. One of the problems with sync is that the sync preferences have kind of been all over the place and a little bit hard to get to. Well, UI has an addition to it. We now have a sync tab. There's a little cloud at the top right-hand side of the screen next to all of our panels here, and if I click that, I can go to preferences and I can get a quick idea of how much storage I've got. I can pause syncing, so on and so forth. This will direct link you to syncing in the preferences if you need to fix something. Anyway, super nice and super handy to have. And another little user interface tweak that might not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but it is to me. But if we go over and we look at our curves panel here, and we're going to make curves adjustments, you're going to notice that the appearance is a little bit different here. So I'm on the overall here. If I switch over to the red channel, notice how you have red up here and you have a little bit of cyan down here. The green channel has magenta and green, and the blue channel has yellow and blue. So I have done videos in the past where I've talked about levels and curves adjustments for a lot of different applications. It's kind of a universal tool for any kind of photo editing. One thing that a lot of people don't understand, though, is when you go into those specific color channels, channels and you move your midtones or your highlights or your shadows, what it's actually going to do to affect the image. So you can see really clearly now that in the blue channel, if I want to cool this image down, let's say, I'm going to add a midpoint, and if I drag it up towards the blue at the top here, it's going to get much more cool. I can also drag it down and make it warmer. This already has a lot of yellow and red in it, so let's just bring it up, cool it down a little bit. I can also balance out if I feel like it's a little too red. I can add some cyan into that. Anyway, this is really useful because it actually visually shows you what you're doing. The other cool thing is we now have input that we can actually adjust. So I can click on the input and I can change that from 133 to 125 if I want. And so I use the Wacom tablet, and sometimes it spazzes out when I'm working in a small space like this. So some just really simple, but I think it's a big deal to me at least, some great visual cues in the user interface as far as the curves are concerned. So now we're going to switch over and I want to talk a little bit about Adobe Camera Raw. Now, Adobe Camera Raw, if you've ever opened a RAW file into Photoshop and you get this big dialog box that has kind of a dated UI in it, and it allows you to do some adjustments to your image before you bring it into Photoshop. There's another way you can get to it. I'll show you in just a second. This has had a big UI overhaul as well. So for instance, I have a sample image here that I did some cleanup on in Photoshop. I had some dust and scratches in here that I had removed. And the one thing you can do if you want to invoke Camera Raw, you can actually do it as a filter. So I'm going to go up under the filter menu at the top, and I'm going to say Camera Raw filter, and this gives you the same dialog box that we get when we just try to direct open an image into Photoshop that is a raw image. And so you can see this has been cleaned up considerably, and the way I was explained, or the way it was explained to me, is that Adobe really wanted something that felt more in line with Lightroom, and it was just needed some major updates in terms of what you could do in here and the way it looked and the way it felt. It was designed for older monitors back in the day where you didn't have nearly as much monitor real estate, and it was due for an update. And it's interesting because this is such a powerful engine, and it's essentially is the raw interpretation that you're going to use under the hood. Essentially, when you're in Lightroom, you can invoke it in Photoshop. But the other cool thing, and this has been here for a while, but most people probably don't know that it's here, is I can go in and there's all kinds of tools here. I can do healing, I can do brush adjustments, graduated filters, so on and so forth. I can even go down here and do presets. And speaking of presets, I can drop down here and I've got my preset pack 1 and 2 installed in here, and when you hover over each one it will give you a preview. And some of you may not know that I have released preset pack number 2. You can get it as a bundle with preset pack 1 if you don't already have it, but this essentially gives you 32 presets. I've got all kinds of monochrome looks in here, and these give you great starting points if you want to do something and then do further edits. And these are things that I use all the time. A lot of vintage color presets if I want the look of maybe film or maybe a C print or something like that. I will link this up in the show description. You should check out the new presets if you haven't seen them yet. They are on sale and available as a bundle. This is a good time and an opportunity to get something that might actually be useful in your own workflow as well. So now let's move over to Lightroom CC and check out a few things. So this is the image I had previously open in Lightroom Classic, and remember I did those localized hue adjustments to it. Well, guess what? They are here and they are also synced. So if I click on the masking tool here, you're going to see here's our selection points. Let's go ahead and grab one of them. You're going to see these are the edits that I put in the previous example. So this is exactly the same as what we have in Lightroom Classic, and it's also cool that they both sync up together behind the scenes. We also have a new versioning feature, which is really cool because if you're like me and you can't make up your mind sometimes and you do 2 or 3 different edits, and before what we've done is just created variations of the original image and made our edits there, this is a little cleaner way to do this. So in the same image, if you look over on the edit panel at the very bottom right hand side of the screen, you're going to see next to our presets button, we now have a new versions button. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. You're going to see this pops out a little side menu. So by default, the original is a version that we have all the time. So I've done all these edits to this image. What I can do is say create version, and I can give it a name, and I'm going to say vibrant color, for lack of anything more creative right now. And let's say that I want to, I don't know, maybe do a black and white version of this image. So I could go in here up to my profile, and let's just select a different profile. I'm going to select one of these black and white monochrome profiles. There we go. There's one there. Not a lot of extensive editing. I would probably spend more time on this, but what I can do is I can now say create version. I can call this monochrome, and boom, now I have a monochrome version. So if you want to go select between different versions and make up your mind later on on what it is that you like, or maybe use them for different things. Also, much like presets, when I mouse over these, sorry, it was probably confusing earlier because I was kind of spazzing with the mouse, but you can see a preview of each version, and this will allow you to do a lot of really cool things in Lightroom. Oh, and all of these versions will sync with Lightroom Mobile, so if you edit on your phone or an iPad or something like that, or even if you're editing while you're traveling and you're just not sure the look you're going for and you want to mess with it when you get back to the studio, this is all syncable, which is very awesome. Another nice addition to Adobe Lightroom CC is the ability to add presets on imports. So this is really cool. If you go under the Lightroom menu at the top of the screen, I'm going to go under Preferences, and I'm going to go under my import preferences, and this allows me to add copyright to imported images, but under that, raw defaults. By default, it's the Adobe default, and I can select this as a drop-down box. I can say camera settings, and what this will do is any camera settings, let's say you shoot on Fujifilm cameras and you want it to apply the film simulations on import, you can certainly do that. It's basically mirrors whatever you shot with in the camera, or I can apply my own presets. And what's really cool about this, you remember the ISO adaptive presets that we did earlier? You can apply those on import too, so you don't even have to think about it later. You just bring your images in, it applies the appropriate noise reduction for the camera that you're using, and you're good to go. It saves you a step, and you don't have to fiddle around wasting time on each image while you're editing. Very cool. I want to hop back over to Adobe Lightroom Classic for a second. Apparently, Adobe told me that this has probably been one of their most requested features ever, and they finally got it in here. So let's say we want to export an image. I'm going to right-click on the image, and we're going to go down to Export, and let's just hit the Export dialog box. We now have the ability to watermark an image. So if that's your thing, and I guess a lot of people want to do this, we can click watermark. We can do a simple copyright watermark, and we can actually go in and edit all our watermarks and pick exactly how this is going to look. So if watermarking is important to you, this is now a way that you can do it on export. So these last updates that I want to talk about are specific to Lightroom CC, and I want to say something about Lightroom CC is that when this came out a couple years ago, a lot of people were like, what is this? And essentially it was a complete rewrite of Lightroom to have cloud functionality in it. And it's come a long way. It wasn't that great to begin with. It was really foreign user interface, but it's consistent with what's on the mobile apps. And Adobe have done a really awesome job, I think, of integrating all the features that we want in Classic, and it's really close to just becoming Classic. In fact, you're going to notice in this update that they no longer really call it Lightroom CC, it's just Lightroom. And then there's Lightroom Classic. So I would imagine that at some point when they have the full feature set integrated, that we probably will do away with Lightroom Classic. I'm not sure how that's going to work. That's just my guess. A lot of people are going to be mad. Don't be mad at me. It's just a guess. Don't be mad at Adobe. They haven't announced that. But I'm saying it's really impressive, some of the features that we've got in Classic. And one of those features I did a whole video on maybe a year and a half ago, I think. I will link it up here. But if you were interested in working with clients and you want the ability to take a library of images that you've got, sync them to the cloud, and you can do this currently with Lightroom Classic and CC, and you can make that link public and you can send it to a client. There is a commenting system, and I've actually used this before in the past with clients. It's really nice. It's very useful. They do need to sign up for an Adobe account to be able to comment, but most people that you would be working with in the creative world probably already have that anyway. But this is a great way to get feedback on images. When I used it in a particular instance, it was very helpful because there wasn't a lot of phone calling and wasting time. It was like, okay, this is great, and then I'd get an email saying, hey, check out our comments, everything looks good, and then I'd be able to go in, and then because it's all syncing, I don't have to re-upload the image. It just syncs my edits with adobe.lightroom.com. But now we're going to have the ability for the comments to be able to display in Lightroom CC. So if you go down to the bottom here, there is a comment tab, and you will see those. I don't have anything set up right now with comments on it, but it is a commenting system that will alert you, and it will be able to give feedback and stuff from within the application. So this cuts down even more lines of communication. Another really cool feature that Adobe added, I guess last year in Lightroom CC, was this whole kind of tutorial layer. And so if you look at Lightroom CC and we go over just to the home button, you're going to see tutorials and features from various photographers in here, and you can learn all kinds of techniques for editing. Previously, this has been more or less a curated collection of sorts, and now this has kind of been opened up to everybody. So you're going to see that I'm Ted here. I have a little login up at the top, and I can go edit my profile, and you can also share your profile with other people. I will put this link in the description of this video if you want to follow me on Lightroom. And actually, it might be a good idea, because the other thing you can do is you can actually create tutorials that are like, let's say that there's an edit video that I want to make and I want to show you guys how to do something specific. I can save all my steps and upload that into something that you can actually download to your computer as a preset. And this is a really cool tool for collaborative learning, and I think there's a lot of educational opportunities here. I'm actually really excited about this, and I'm being very genuine when I say this, because for somebody who teaches editing on YouTube as part of my channel, this is really handy to be able to have, and I think this is a really exciting feature that they've finally been able to incorporate. So I would love to hear what you guys think, so drop me a comment below. All these updates at the time you're seeing this video are available, so you can go into your Creative Cloud app and make sure you've got them. If you don't see them immediately, they will be updated periodically throughout the day. Anyway, go download it and check out. This is a lot of cool stuff that Adobe have turned over in this new iteration of the Lightrooms, and I say that because they're on every platform, on every device. Anyway, and check out my presets. I will put the link to those as well. We have Preset Pack 1 and now 02 available on sale and in a bundle. Check them out. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Until then, later.